Ladies and gentlemen, France have qualified themselves for the 2026 FIFA World Cup in Canada, Mexico, and the other North American country. But despite all that, I don't really care. Well, I don't really care. Listen, obviously, I'm happy that France have qualified. But let's be really honest here. Was there ever any doubt? No. And I think before I go on and talk about the game, between France and Ukraine here today, I just want to talk about the fact that, I think that the UEFA World Cup qualifying, it needs to be revamped. It needs a makeup. It needs a do-over. It needs to be blown up and rethought from the ground up. Because, it is so boring. There's no in game. There's no jeopardy. There's nothing. As in, for all the big nations, there's basically a guarantee they're all going to be there. Which I guess for the World Cup, you go and say is good because, it means that you're going to have the big nations there and whatnot. But for the qualifiers, it basically makes them as glorified. They're not friendlies because obviously they got something in them, but they don't mean anything, right? If you're a France, a Spain, a Portugal, Portugal lost today, but France, Spain, Portugal, England, etc., so on and so forth, you're never doubting the fact that you're not going to go to the World Cup. Now, some other countries, Italy, not so easy. But generally speaking, for all the big European heavyweights, there's never any question as to whether or not they go. And there's no jeopardy in the games. You go and you play teams that are clearly weaker than you, and you go through anyways. So I feel like this reminds me a lot of the previous Champions League format in which you only really take it seriously after the competition. So in this case, knockout stages onwards. In this case, the World Cup onwards, basically. And I don't know what needs to be done, how it needs to be done. I think number one, things like just generally in international football, I think that there needs to be, I don't get why they go and they separate like in the fall/late summer period. They split up the window into like September, October, November. I don't know why they don't just do like one massive window that's like, a month long where you get all your 6 games done then and there rather than, playing 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, 2 weeks there. Why not just have a month and a long or month long or however long you need to have it period where you get all your qualifiers done and you move on and make it like the new Champions League model where you've got pots, 4 pots, you play 8 games, let's say for example, and you're gonna play against an England and Spain to be able to go and test yourselves against them. Because the other thing too is that basically, luckily now we've got sort of the Nations League and whatnot, but basically going to the World Cup, you have no idea how good these teams actually are because these teams don't play each other recently, like regularly on a regular basis. Recently, you could say, okay, we had the Nations League in June and whatnot, so we have an idea of France versus Spain, Portugal versus Spain, those games and so on and so forth, which true, you get. However, as in typically from now, basically until the World Cup, and especially in March, you're not going to know how good is France actually. The March window, they're going to find some Fugazi friendlies. I'm not going to know how good the French national team is against the best competition or Spain or England or Portugal or insert whatever country name you want in there because they're only going to play friendlies against teams that they're most likely clearly better than. And you're going to have to go into the World Cup and saying, well, I don't know, which I guess you could argue makes it more interesting, but I don't know. I want to see better international football, and I think there needs to be a revamp, having one international window, do something also to prevent, extensive travel, even for like ecological purposes and whatnot. I think it's better, but hey, that's just my 2 cents about it, and I'd like to get yours. But to get back onto the game, France go and qualify with a thunderous 4-0 victory at the Parc des Princes over Ukraine. And honestly, I don't know how to feel about this game. On the one side, I think this is where the definition of it was a game of two halves really does apply. Because if I go on and look at the stats for the first half alone, I go and see France completely, absolutely dominated Ukraine. 75% possession, 0.34 XG, 10 shots, 3 shots on target. But for all that domination, they didn't really create much. No big chances created, had a lot of passes, had a lot of possession. It was really slow. It was really sterile. There was no movement. There was no dynamism. And honestly, I nearly fell asleep. Listen, I was thinking about potentially ending the stream. But luckily, as I said, it was a game of two halves. And the second half was significantly better. France in this half, less possession. But you go and you look, 3.16 XG, 15 shots, 7 shots on target, 9 big chances created. 9 big chances created, and you only had 7 shots on target. That's crazy. But I think, we looked a lot better in the second half. There was a lot more dynamism, a lot more freshness about us. I think the subs helped a lot. I think the fact that Ukraine eventually, they got tired, they can't press and whatnot nearly as well. Also helped. But I'd go and say that overall, I'm I'm okay with the performance. Like, it wasn't great. I think, we're much better than Ukraine. There were during the game itself, I was going and saying, like, it doesn't feel like when France were 3-0 up, it didn't feel like a 3-0 type of game. But when you go and you look back then at the overall statistics in the game, you go and you look, France, dominated possession, had a much higher XG and an XG of 3. Ukraine only had 1 shot, not even on target, no big chances created, no shots on target. France dominated the shot category, dominated the shots on target, more big chances created, all of this. And so you go and say that, yeah, this is a 4-0 result is probably relatively fair. But I think France just didn't really need to get out of second gear for the most part. And in the first half, it didn't pay dividends, but in the second half it did, and we went on to go. The thing is, for the French national team, I've said this in the past, I feel like to a certain degree that I feel like we're the Real Madrids of international football, in the sense that we're never gonna, blow teams apart in qualification. It's very rare that France will go perfect in qualification when all their games look like the best team in the world. However, when the tough gets going and the going gets tough, when the big lights come on, right, when it's time to put pedal to the metal, France turn up. When you look, Euros, even though France, by many people's estimations, had a underwhelming Euros campaign, you're still talking about semifinalists who narrowly lost to the eventual champion Spain. The previous World Cup, goes without saying, they went on to win it. Even if you want to go with just more recently, the Nations League, even though it wasn't a good game, they still managed were within 1 goal against them against Spain. When you look back, the World Cups finalists, you look back, they won the Nations League obviously in that time as well. And you could argue their one biggest blip was the 2020, 2021 Euros, where they got knocked out in the round of 16. And even that was on penalties. Before then, obviously, you had, winning the World Cup in 2018, getting to the final of the Euros. So France is a team that in international competitions bodes very well. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the way that Didier Deschamps sets up here. And that gets me onto the thing that the game, the way we play, it is absolutely disgusting. Like, I'm not really proud to go and say that, yeah, this is the French national team, this is how we play, because the football we play is not really all that great. However, it gets us wins. It gets us to where we need to go. And honestly, for international football, I just want to win. How it happens, obviously, I ideally like to play really nice, expansive, attractive football. But hey, at times beggars can't be choosers. And this thing of like the fact that Conte, even though I think he was really good today, the fact that Conte is starting for the French national team in big 2025 at 34 years old. And the issue with that, it's not even like I'm going and saying it, it's not like an indication of, the fact of like the lack of talent for France. I think France's midfield is definitely our weak spot, but you still think you've got players like Kone, who started with him, 𝙀𝙀𝘾𝘼𝙎𝙏, Pogba, if you want to go and consider him, 𝙀𝙪𝙾𝘼𝑒MRI, and a bunch of other players, and then obviously tens, your 𝙬𝙖s, your 𝙬𝙪𝑾𝑠, etc., so on and so forth, who can play in that advanced midfield role. So you've got, profiles to fit in there. I just think it's that Didier Deschamps, in his very defensive Catenaccio mindset, wants to play with a very specific defensive rigidity, and that's why he chose, for example, today to play Kone and Conte, Kone Conte double pivot. And in fairness for him, we go and say it worked well. Ukraine created no chances, didn't have anything, had 1 shot, didn't have an attempt on goal. The defense was solid, didn't have to do anything. Saliba Upamecano looked good. Koundé looked very good. Digne looked good. And then Mike Maignan had literally nothing to do. Had one of the easiest performances he'll ever have. So there's that. I think the area, though, that I think where France is definitely probably the most blessed and probably the best in the world is attacking-wise. I mean, the fact that France can start Olise, Cherki, Barcola, Mbappe, and on the bench have players like 𝙀𝙀𝘋𝑼, 𝙀𝙀𝘋𝑼, Christopher Nkunku, who else is them? Jean-Philippe Mateta, and the fact that people like Dembele and Doué also at home watching the game. As in, I don't think I won't say, ever in the history of the football, but like, name me national teams in the history of the game that have had such attacking depth and, breadth as well. Not only is it like super broad, but like a lot of these players can play interchangeably. You have Doué who can play as a 10. You've got Cherki who can play as a 10. You've got Olise who plays as a 10. You've got Mbappe. You've got Mateta. You've got 𝙀𝙀𝘋𝑼. You've got Dembele who can play at the 9. You've got all of them they're very flexible and can play basically everywhere in the top 3. So I think that's going to be lethal. The only issue that I have is I don't think Deschamps is the coach that's going to be able to get the best out of them attacking-wise in an attacking sense. And that's my biggest concern with the French national team. But today, let's talk about the performances. As I said previously, I thought that we looked really poor in the first half. In the second half, everybody was great. The best player today, I don't think anybody particularly stood out in a massive way. I thought Conte, in fairness, I think he was really, really good and probably would give him the man of the match. But I think we need to start off by the man, the myth, legend himself, the dictator himself, the dictator-in-chief, le dictateur, Kylian Mbappé, who gets a 9.4, 2 goals and an assist, becomes the third highest ranked, or is now the third highest ranked ever French goal scorer, not just for the French national team, but in the history of the game. And today, with the second goal, scored his 400th career goal. Let me say that again. Kylian Mbappé, at 26 years old, about to turn 27 soon, scored his 400th career goal. Now, I'm not sure, at what stage, and I'm going to go and probably see things afterwards, saying, oh, this is where Messi was at this age, this is where Ronaldo was at this age. But the fact that, for all the things that I've said about Mbappe, good, bad, all these things, the fact that at 26, you're a World Cup winner, you've got the most goals in the World Cup final, if I'm not mistaken, and you scored 400 career goals. For reference, Benzema in his entire career has 511. I think, Thierry Henry has like 450 or 420 or somewhere in there, which means that very likely this season he's going to surpass Henry, and within the next two seasons, is going to surpass Benzema, and at worst he'll be 28, maybe 29. Ridiculous. At some point you gotta put your hands up and say respect. Chapeau l'artiste. But what I will say though is that this 9.4 is absolutely fugazi. There is no way in a 9.4. This is why I say sometimes fault mobs, maybe sofa score is a lot better, but fault mob, that's why I can't take some of these things seriously, because I thought in the first half, I need to go full screen. In the first half, he dropped a generational stinker, a stinker of tremendous proportions. In the second half, he was much better. He looked more lively, obviously scored the 2 goals, a lot more dynamic. But in that first half alone, I legitimately believe, I think he lost the most goals in that first half with 8 in a single half alone. Felt like he got dispossessed. He got dispossessed twice officially. I don't know how they count dispossession and whatnot, but for me, it looked like he got dispossessed at least 6 times. He had a generational stinker, was trying to dribble too much, was losing the ball, was getting caught on the ball all the time. Just absolutely terrible. It was the Mbappe that you don't like to see, the Mbappe that tries to play, basically be everywhere and be everything and everything at every single time. It's the Mbappe you don't like. In the second half, he played a lot more simple, was connecting a bit better, was sort of staying in his area, staying in his lane, and France and him played a lot better for it. So Mbappe today, really good performance, scored a goal. First goal, penalty. At first I thought it wasn't a pen. Upon relooking, the Ukrainian player clearly stamps on Elise's foot. Clear pen, Mbappe goes, Panenka down the middle. Thank you very much. How's your day? Second goal goes, again, the bit craziest of tap-ins of all tap-ins goes. The ball, Ekitike does all the work, goes, the takes shot, ricochets off the keeper, is in the path of Mbappe. Mbappe has to control it, tap it into an open goal. Probably one of the easiest goals he's ever going to score in his life. And then finally got a good assist, one-time assist for Ekitike to score a goal of his own. Mbappe, overall, if you remove the first half, generational performance. But voila, I'm not like some of these people out there. I have to take the whole thing in the entirety of its context. And I thought today overall, I don't think that it wasn't his best performance. But alas, we move. I thought Barcola was good. I think he looks, I don't know why Deschamps honestly started him. He's been very leggy. He's been didn't play for PSG over the weekend because he's been struggling physically. Started him, played 67 minutes. I'm not sure if that was necessarily needed. Could have brought him on. Could have started somebody else. Could have started Nketiah there. Could have started anybody else to go and see a different profile. But hey, it is okay. I thought he looked good. Didn't get any GA or anything, but I thought was good today. I thought Cherki similarly was good. Lost the ball at times. Was dynamic. It was basically our only shot for trying to break down the low block along with Ølse. Who, speaking of which, got a goal today. 9.0 performance, I thought was really good today. Was fouled the most, created the most chances and whatnot. Another very good Michael Ølse performance, and his second goal for the French national team, if I'm mistaken. I thought Koné today has started the game off really, really well, but sort of tapered off. I feel afterwards didn't really seem nearly as much. That could just be that I think the team overall played a lot better in the second half. And especially in the second half of the first half, I think his performance dipped, but again, did the job. And obviously the back line, there's not really much to say about them. Upamecano looked solid. It's hard to go and judge how good they were because Ukraine didn't offer anything, and Mike Maignan, same thing. There's not really much to say. He didn't have a single shot to face or a single shot on target at least. So pretty calm night for him. Yeah, there's not really much else to go and say. France were better. France are clearly the better team. There's no two ways about that. And France qualify for the 2026 World Cup. And they're going to be in my backyard in Canada. So it'll be interesting to see. I hope France go and have a couple games in Canada. I'll try to go and see if I can get tickets and whatnot. And yeah, it's gonna be very interesting to see. So obviously that other games, Portugal lost to Ireland. Ronaldo got a red card. Vitinha generational performance. So I'll have to go back and watch that. But guys, that's it. That's all for me today. Not really much else to go and say. France qualified for the World Cup. And yeah, that's it. That's all. Thank you guys very much. And remember, stay safe, stay kind, and stay blessed. Godspeed.